Hey, welcome everybody, and thanks for being with us today. Here we are in the middle of NAHJ's 2021 virtual conference, and this is a Palabra showcase for you. With us today are two Palabra contributors, two of my favorite Palabra contributors. They're emerging voices in the global travel industry. First up with us is Jeannette Ceja, whose brand is Jet Set Jeannette. And she's also about to make her writing debut in Palabras, so look out for that. Welcome, Jeannette. And also with us is Kim Haas, creator and host of public television's Afro Latino Travels with Kim Haas. Kim was recently profiled on Palabra, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about her journey today. Okay, welcome to the two of you. Thanks for being here. Let's hope we have a lot of fun this morning talking about some important issues when it comes to global travel, but also let's get in there and show people what this business is like. We'll pull back the curtains a little bit and talk about that. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Hey, well, listen, we're here to talk today about the global travel marketplace and representation for our communities. Our stories, are they being told to the fullest extent possible? What are the opportunities for us in this business? So right off the bat, let's begin with this one question that really, I think, hopefully will set the stage for this conversation. And to tell us from your perspectives, we'll start with you, Jeannette. What does representation look like in the travel industry?
Yes, well, thank you, Ricardo, Kim, and NHJ, first for having this amazing discussion and including travel, which is such an important part of the world, really. And representation to me really feels like being seen, feeling heard, feeling like a value, like you belong, right? And I think that after traveling now to 61 countries, I've recognized the similarity that we have no matter what country we may live in, what language we speak. We all want to be seen, heard, and appreciated. And I think especially in the travel industry that is so diverse and covers so many different countries and cultures, it's really important to have representation as well on the forefront in every factor to share those stories. And that's why representation is really important.
Kim, from your point of view, what does it look like? What does change look like for us?
I mean, I echo everything that Jeannette just said. Travel and representation in travel is crucial. It's key. I think it's so important for people to see people who look like them in the travel industry because they understand their experiences, they understand their passions, their interests, and they can tell the stories that are sometimes those untold stories, those stories that sometimes we just never hear about, those great people doing great things in incredible places, or sometimes those quiet, individuals that are doing great work. So travel and representation in travel is just so incredibly important. And I think, as I said, I really echo what Jeannette just said. I'm hoping that this last year has been a pivot point for us, and that we are starting to open up, our hearts and minds, and the industry is starting to really change in terms of allowing more people to the table. And my hope is that eventually we will all be at the table where all stories can be told and heard and appreciated, and as Jeannette said, and valued.
Yeah, well, I think you just kind of hit on a really important point there that, listen, this is a $400 billion global industry. This is huge.
Yeah.
There ought to be room for all of us, for every community to somehow participate in this global marketplace. And the funny thing is that there's a lot of room to grow. So beyond that 400 billion. So then it comes to my mind, so what is the problem? What is it? Why has it been so difficult, perhaps, for people in our communities to emerge as thought leaders, to emerge as influencers in this, what is a huge marketplace? And that leads me to think about, to Kim, your journey. And let's take a look quickly at your show. And then coming out of that, tell us a little bit about your journey and what it took to get you to your prominent place now in public television.
Thanks, sure.
Afro Latino Travels with Kim Haas introduces you to Latin America's vibrant and inspiring Afro Latino communities.
Esta es mi identidad. Sí, soy negro, estoy orgulloso de él.
Come with me on this incredible journey. Venga conmigo.
Well, and you said it right. It's been a journey with a capital J, and it's been at least 10 years of trying to get sponsorship, underwriting, support for the show so that we could air it on PBS. And I think what your questions about representation 10 years ago when I was pitching and talking to folks about, hey, I really want to celebrate these incredible Afro-Latino communities throughout Latin America. I mean, people looked at me like, I had a horn coming out of my forehead and, blood drooling out of my sockets. And it went nowhere. There was no interest. And it's, very unfortunate. And only in the last, I think, two years or so, but we wound up, fortunately, talking to Costa Rica. And, there's nothing like having a champion. And we had a champion, Arlette, who was originally from Nicaragua. And she just believed in the show and the importance of the show. And so they were working with Costa Rica and helped us pitch it. But, there's nothing like having a champion, a supporter, as the two of you have been, and people who understand something that is not mainstream and are ready to take a chance on it, because it wasn't at that point. And as I said, even 10 years ago, when I was talking about Afro-Latinos, people just looked at me like I was crazy, and there was no interest. And it was hard going. But I think for anybody, if you believe in something, hold on to it, as hard as it may be, as hard as it may seem, and things will change. And thank goodness they have. And, the show's airing, and they've been airing, and we're going to have another airing on Create TV at the end of this month in July and early August. But that's about holding on to a dream and having wonderful people and sponsors who just hold your hand and give you lots of love and support along the way.
I think it's critical also to point out that frankly, a lot of his marketplace, a lot of it is driven by notions of who's going to watch a show like Afro Latino Travels, right? But I think what's lost often in the discussion is the fact that in the United States alone, of the huge Latino population, fully 25% of Latinos identify themselves as Afro-Latino, right? So that's a big number. That's a big potential marketplace. It just stunned me when I first saw that data and when I first ran into your story, that why hadn't this been recognized before as a potential moneymaker for somebody?
Absolutely. I mean, this is so crucial what you said. In the United States, at least 25% of the Latino population identifies Afro-Latinos, and then those numbers throughout Latin America, 25 to 30%. Yep. So you're looking at millions of people whose stories are not being told, who aren't seeing people who look like them on camera, in the movies, behind the cameras, because that's also very important, and whose stories aren't being told in magazines. And when they are, they tend to be very negative, very hurtful. And I just wanted to help celebrate and honor amazing Afro-Latinos that I was meeting on my travels, and these chefs and cooks and families and writers and painters, are just tremendous individuals who, unfortunately, their stories just aren't being told. And I wanted to be part of that, and I had that great passion and desire to share those stories. So that's how this whole thing got started, and so glad to be on this journey.
Yeah, and the cool thing is that, listen, you've got just a hemisphere to explore. I can't think of a Latin American country that doesn't have a vibrant, exciting, unrecognized Afro Latino population.
Well, I think the two of you are, Mexican descent, and Mexico has an amazing Afro-Mexican population, communities around Oaxaca, and then Argentina, a country that people may not think of as being of Afro-descendant communities. Argentina also is just starting to recognize its African roots. So, you can see the countries kind of on a spectrum, those that you kind of immediately recognize and think about in terms of countries like Cuba and Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. And then there are countries that, you may not be as aware of, but have their own histories. And I think that's what makes this so incredibly interesting and exciting, to learn about these communities and to hopefully be part of, sharing their stories.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. And Jeannette, is it that level of curiosity that I'm seeing from Kim? I also see in you is that curiosity about the other, curiosity about other places. Is that what's driven you to create Jet Set Jeannette and get out to more than 60 countries so far and counting?
Yes, my journey started when I was a young girl. When I would watch like Spanish news, and I'm first generation, but I don't know what my first language was, English or Spanish, to be honest, because in my household, there's only Spanish and school was English. So I grew up with both languages, both cultures, watching different programs on Spanish channels and on English channels. But I recognized something as a young girl. I would see Cristiano Amanpour. I would see, different reporters that I would look up to, and I'm like, I want to be a foreign news correspondent. That's what I thought when I was young. I would read the newspaper to my family at dinner, and sometimes they'd be like, oh, please stop. But I wanted to be that messenger of news and inform people, because I think information can help people, can open their minds. Then when I started to change the channel, literally to the History Channel, Discovery Channel, Travel Channel, I was like, whoa, this is what I want to do. I want to inform people about the beautiful cultures and cuisines and languages and people around this world, but I didn't see anyone that looked like me, right? So I saw the Anthony Bourdain, the Rick Steves, Samantha Brown, which are amazing leaders in travel and hosts, but I didn't see a Latina on there. So as a young girl, I recognized this. And so I made it in my mind that one day I would do that. And I remember watching a show with Samantha Brown, and I told her, I interviewed her earlier this year. I said, she's been inspirational, just like Kim, paving a way for more women in this industry, because there's also a lot of stereotypes about, if you're a woman, how are you going to do travel, have a family, etc. And that's a whole nother story and conversation. But, as a woman and a Latina, I felt like I wanted to pave a way, and I didn't know how. And I didn't have anyone who told me, do A, B, C, D, and you'll get there. I really started from just going to all the travel shows when the New York Times, LA Times used to have them. I would buy my own tickets. I would sit front row. I would take notes. I would meet people. And this is pre-social media. I would just start from the very, very bottom, building a foundation, building a network. And in the meantime, when I was in journalism school, my student advisor, who passed away a few years ago, but he was the travel editor at one of the newspapers in Tennessee, the Tennessean. So I knew there was a niche. I knew there was a place for travel. But it took me about 15 years to figure it all out, put it all together, and mindset, believing that we are worth it, that we are valuable, we like to travel, we have spending power. I think what Kim was saying, in the past 1 or 2 years, I'm finally seeing, after 15 years or so of trying to, get a movement going, is that the leaders, people, sponsors, companies, brands, networks are starting to take notice, like, okay, you know what? We need to sit down and listen. And we need to understand more about the Latinos, the Hispanics, that they're very diverse, and they're not monolith. And so let's understand more about this community, this amazing, diverse community. So I'm really excited.
It is amazing because I spent 10 years in Latin America as a foreign correspondent for U.S. newspapers, Dallas Morning News and Night Raider newspapers. And I was based in Mexico City, but I traveled throughout the region. And I can't imagine a more satisfying feeling than being able to go to all these different countries and do it in a fashion that that your job is to tell stories from these places and deliver those stories to hopefully our communities back home in the United States. But I think that one of the things that both of you, I'm sure, have experienced, I experienced it, is just a sense of stereotyping and myth making, both in the realm of travel, but also of the storytellers and who should tell the stories. So I'm wondering if, from both of your perspectives, and maybe we'll start with Kim, but what are some of those myths and stereotypes that you've had to overcome to get the show off the ground, but also to be able to assert yourself as the appropriate and the best possible teller of the stories that you're looking at?
No, those are great questions, Ricardo. And I think, some of it is, not that, just in terms of myths that I've heard, are that, African Americans, Afro Latinos don't travel, they don't have money. So you hear those kinds of things, and that they don't have, people will say they don't have stories, they don't have a history, they haven't done anything. And those are, I think, what I hear or tend to hear the most is those kinds of things, that the money isn't there, that they don't travel, they're not interested in traveling, and that they don't have stories. And I think that's what has been part of this desire that I have to tell the stories. And it's just been incredible in terms of the feedback that I receive from viewers who say, oh my gosh, number one, they didn't know that there were Blacks in Costa Rica. So that's a lack of storytelling. And that's a lack of, Costa Rica and Latin America telling the stories of their African descendants. And so, I thank, obviously the Costa Rica Tourism Board for being so open to this idea and this concept. And, because they could have gone another direction, and they could have decided to do, again, what they, some of the travel that they've been doing and the spending around, some other regions. But instead, they decided, yes, we want to support this. We'll focus on, the Afro Costa Ricans in Limon. So we have an episode in Limon, which is the Black part of Costa Rica. And, so that commitment, so having a commitment from an institution, from individuals, is really important. And then I think, as the three of us, know, it's who tells the stories. So if we get a chance and, or we take it, upon ourselves and take the initiative to tell the stories, we can tell the stories of people who otherwise are not represented, who otherwise you just don't see in media, whether it be television, blogs, radio, print, podcasts. You just don't hear those stories. So opening up this universe so that more people, again, are at the table and have a chance to tell these stories is so important.
It's
and
great.
It just can't be, yeah.
Hey, and Jeannette, for you, okay, so listen, not only are you a Latina in the travel business, right, in the travel game, but you often travel by yourself.
Yes.
A woman.
Yes.
So right there, you're already running into what I would say are two probably optical barriers, right? to being able to get out there and say, hey, follow me around the globe, because there are myths and stereotypes about both Latinas traveling and especially women traveling on their own. So tell us how you overcame all of that, especially in the beginning when, I mean, I'm sure that you were out there literally on your own, and describe how that was.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think in college I did a study abroad in Italy, which was my first alone experience living in a different country. But that really helped me grow as a solo traveler. I think what I tell a lot of women, and I have some mentees as well, is, traveling alone, especially as a woman, I do believe we should have extra precautions. I learned the hard way when I would travel alone. Like, for example, I'd be at a restaurant and let's say some random guy approached me and said, "Hi, are you alone?" And I'm naive. I'm very honest and very, I am who I am. I'm like, "Yeah, I am, Lala." Okay, no, ladies, do not say you're alone. You can say, "I'm here to visit, the president, the ambassador, someone." And also, you don't have to respond. I mean, it really is no one's business whether you're alone or not, right? But also as a solo female traveler, I also always say, maybe start with a local trip, maybe a road trip, or, if you're in the US and you want to travel to a different state, maybe go to Hawaii or Puerto Rico or somewhere within your country that's, that you feel safe. Traveling solo, especially as a woman, it's like a muscle. The more you do it, the more confidence you get, the more awareness you are. And then the more you want to, for me, the more I wanted to do it. So I traveled to about 30 countries alone. Last month I was in Turkey, and I was their MC for the Global Tourism Forum, which is an amazing experience. And I was also one of the only Latinas there, and Americans really in Turkey that I saw. I didn't encounter many Americans last month. So for me, it was a really proud moment to be a representation for Latinas, for women, for Americans, to show people, the world, yeah, we're here, we travel, we have a lot of value to add. And so it's great when people around the world ask me about my culture, Mexican American, my family, all things about it. So I think we become kind of like ambassadors when we travel, because we get the opportunity to show people, yes, we exist, we're here, and we're very diverse and we're beautiful, and so I think it's great. I love solo travel a lot.
That's great. And I love that. It's really fun to get out there and explore. I mean, I always built in time around my assignments, and I know some of my colleagues have often made fun of me for doing this, but at the beginning and at the end of often difficult assignments, I would build in some downtime, a down day, I used to call them, and I'd go see a movie. I'd go explore the local mall. I'd go shopping in the downtown area just to get a feel for where I was. So it's not just this intense experience and you're covering a conflict or you're covering a pretty heavy story. You do want to get an idea of where you are, because that helps you then transmit that story back to your audiences, I think. And listen, this is a great conversation. I love this. And the great thing about Palabra is our drive is to engage with audiences. So in a second here, we're going to get to some questions that are coming in from our audiences, but I want to turn to, I don't know, maybe this is not necessarily a like question, but I think it's a pressing question that also reflects the urgency that a lot of us have to get out there, to do some post-pandemic travel. I know I was on my first flight in 18 months a week ago, and I went to West Texas, and I didn't get in a fight on the plane, so that's one. But also was a strange experience spending the entire day behind a mask. But it was so gratifying to get out there. And so, Kim, tell me, where are you going first once you're able to fully travel like you did before?
Well, I have to tell you, good for you. I know Jeanette's been, done some traveling. She said she was in Turkey, and I was hoping we had actually working on a shoot in Cuba, in Santiago for December. Not sure. We'll see. That was something that we were obviously really looking forward to. And obviously my, heart and best wishes go out to, Cubans right now. So that was one of the big trips, because that's going to be a shoot that we had planned for December in Santiago. So that for us was a really big deal that we were, starting to prep for. So we may have to put that on the back burner. We'll see. And looking at some other countries that, where we can do some traveling. So that was what I had upcoming.
And Jeannette, how about you? I mean, I know you went to Turkey and everything, but that's still within this pandemic framework, right? Once you're fully able to get that mask off and get out there and get yourself a little drink on the plane, where are you going?
Gosh, this is such a good question. I would love to really maybe go to Peru. I would love to go to a country that I have not visited yet. I'm really interested also in Asia. I would love to go to also more places in Africa. I really am open to any place. That I haven't been to yet because I feel like a sponge. I just want to go learn, explore, and I'm a forever student. I think it's a beautiful thing about being a journalist is your curiosity and you're, a student. Like we're there to learn and share and hopefully grow. And I think after every trip, I come back much more aware and realizing how much I really don't know. Right,
Yeah.
until we get there. So I learned a lot in Turkey as well. I went to Cappadocia and I went to Bodrum and I went to Istanbul. And I learned a lot about, from the locals, the culture. I learned from a couple of locals in Cappadocia. Cappadocia is a town that was made from volcanic remains. And it's one of those places where you see those hot air balloons. It's on everyone's bucket list. And I highly recommend it, by the way. The locals told me what the meaning of Cappadocia means. It means the land of beautiful horses. And I had no idea. And I had not read that anywhere. No one ever told me, but I heard it from the locals. So sometimes it's beautiful when you can put yourself in the place and just be a learner.
Did you see the horses? Were there any horses?
I did. I went horseback riding.
Yes.
There you go. There you go. Hey, well, listen, so let's get to a quick question here that we have for us from Joe Rodriguez. And Joe asks, what's been the biggest challenge to the two of you when it comes to thinking about creating revenue and sustaining your brand, sustaining your business? What have been the challenges, Fred, that you've faced? Kim, tell us a little bit about how you've gotten from point A to point B right now when it comes to generating revenue for your endeavors.
Oh, Joe, that's a good question. I'm still working on it, Joe. Trust me, because with having a show on public television is a whole different way of creating television and travel, and so you have to come up with the financing of the show and pretty much have the show ready to go and ready to air, and then hopefully get it approved for airing. So that's why I was mentioning earlier that 10-year journey of getting sponsorship, getting underwriting. And in the end, you know what, it's kind of like you have to make, I think some of it is about making the investment in yourself. And so, I wound up paying for the crew to shoot in Costa Rica because we by then had the support of the tourism board for in-kind support. So the airfare, lodging, but you still have to pay the crew. And so I had to make that investment in myself, in the idea, the concept, the people telling their stories, and, just go out on a limb and say, I'm going to do this, and, just have faith, because that's what it took. So, we're still thinking about, believe me, the revenue aspects of it and how to sustain it, because it is something we think about. But one of the things we are doing right now is working on tours to coincide with the shows that are airing. And I enjoy that very much, and getting a chance. And people write and ask, hey, are you going to do tours of Costa Rica? I really want to go now as a result of meeting, seeing this person on the show, or seeing Selvin's restaurant in outside of Limon. And so tours are one thing that we can do right now, and that's what we are working on. But there's also other things. But you hit it on the nail on the head, Joe. It's about also revenue and a business model, which we are, still working on and trying to figure out the pieces to the puzzle.
That's great. Jeannette, how are you monetizing what you do?
Yeah, I think it's just about being open and flexible, and like what Kim said before, never giving up. I mean, I had worked with Joe actually at Fox Sports for a few years in LA before I quit and moved to Italy because I wanted to study work abroad, and then I moved to Australia because I really wanted the more global experience of living and working abroad, which I think I recommend to everyone, like you have, Ricardo, as well, working abroad. For me, it's just been pivoting, because especially during the pandemic, I had worked to a lot of amazing opportunities, events that ultimately failed or were stopped because of the pandemic, understandably so. So it's just been about pivoting, finding other ways that I could be a resource, be of service, right? So writing is definitely one, and I think writing is the fundamental for journalists. I remember in journalism school, my professors were always like, you have to be a good writer no matter what broadcast, radio, TV you do. Writing. So I went back to that writing. And that's why, I'm grateful for Palabra for doing my first story with Palabra. Just putting myself out there more in that sense. I do have a podcast as well that I started during the pandemic, where I've had Kim as well and some amazing other travel leaders, thought leaders, and just been pivoting, finding different opportunities to be of value. I think knowing your worth too, because I can recognize now how I used to accept crumbs in the past, or I would do things for free or, experience. And, now it's like no more. Like I have so much education, so much experience, internships, that no more. It's just knowing our worth. And so really putting it out there, and the right people, the right opportunities who know what you bring to the table, know your value, will pay.
That's great. Listen, here's a question from Gabrielle Garay. She wants to know, how do you overcome the language barriers in different countries? That you could run into, say, in Brazil, perhaps some language barriers with Brazilian Portuguese, right? And Jeannette, you've been to a whole bunch of different countries where that's been an issue. So how do you do that? How do we get past these barriers? Kim, I know that for you it's not a barrier by and large, but I suspect that in some places it could be. Just wait till you get to Cuba and you try to hear some of that Spanish going on down there. So how do you address that question, Kim?
Sorry, I think a couple things. I think if you go with, and I always say this, if you go with an open heart and you know where you're going ahead of time, learn some of the, key words. How do you say good morning? How do you say thank you and hello? Some of the customs and traditions. If you can learn that, I think people will see through that. If you have a genuine interest in connecting with people, people will feel that. And even if you don't speak and if you're not fluent in a language, people will feel that. And I think they'll offer you, they'll help you, invite you places. I think the world is really open to you when you are open and when you're willing to, as I said, prep before you go. And so make sure you know, or have, books or your phone with you and you can translate. I mean, we also have so many tools now that can help us as we travel, so that even if you're not, fluent in a language, there's so many tips and things just on our cell phones that can enable us to communicate with folks. But I think learning, some key words and phrases before you go, and you don't have to be, you don't have to be fluent and you don't have to say them, perfectly. People will know what you're trying to say. And again, I think if you do it with an open heart and people see your genuine interest and you're trying, and you're not going somewhere and saying, speak English, I think people will really appreciate that. I think that's what I've, experienced. And I try and make sure that I respond in kind when I go abroad, and that people see that I have a genuine interest in connecting with people. So that would be some of my tips and suggestions.
Great. And Jeannette, obviously you didn't learn Turkish right away before you took your last trip. So how do you prepare and how do you overcome that barrier?
Similar to what Kim was saying, it's before your trip is the preparation and research. So whether that's buying a little guidebook or a language book, just learning the basic hello, how are you, thank you, things, the basics, so you can at least get around. And then, like Kim said, if they see that you're trying, making an effort, 99.9% of the time, they're going to try to help you out or understand. And I will say, nowadays, we have, thanks to technology, language apps like Duolingo. We have a lot more things that are accessible now on our iPhones, as well as I'm sure there's tour groups that you can go with and, practice the language, or locals that can help you somewhere in the city or country that you're going to. one time in France, I was, it's funny story. Somebody was asking me a question in French. Clearly, I didn't know what they were saying. So I just got my Google Translate out and I handed him my phone and he wrote it. And like, that's how, so we're just being creative. And he was asking me out for coffee. So, yeah, so that was the way I was like, what? I don't know. So,
wait, what was the answer, Jeannette? Did you go for coffee?
Very creative. Yeah, but it was just a Google Translate coffee kind of later, Anyways, yeah, but the people are creative. And also when I went to Japan, I went to a restaurant and I was looking, I didn't see any English menus. So when I said eigo, I was like, English menu? They were like, no. And so I just literally looked at the menu and I said, like, so I just figured a way and whatever they brought me, I eat. So it's just about being open, I guess.
Yeah. I think one of the quirks of us traveling, and I'm sure you've all run into this, is that people are often, I don't know, confused perhaps, but in a friendly way, mostly, trying to figure out where you're from and what are you? And I'm sure you get that question all the time, the two of you, when you travel. I mean, I know that when I was in Europe, I joked that I was constantly mistaken for the local ethnic minority that was, dominant in the news. In London, I was a Pakistani. In Germany, I was Turkish. Right, so it just goes on and on. Is that just I think a collateral kind of a thing that you have to experience when we get out there? Because the stereotypical American traveler is white, wearing Bermuda shorts and a Panama hat, probably, right? And a gaudy Hawaiian shirt. So how do you deal with that when you travel? Have you had that kind of an experience? And what do you do when you run into that, Kim?
Well, I think usually, people will ask me if it depends if I'm on the, doing something for the show or if I'm in, like I've been, to Cuba and, because I'm African American, I'm, not an Afro Latina, but as someone of African descent. So they'll immediately think I'm from usually not the country I'm in, but another country. Like they'll say, Panama, are you from Panama? Or especially if I'm speaking Spanish, or they'll ask me if I'm, from another Latin American country. And then I say, no. I might usually just say I'm from New York because New York is so global and that tends to cover, a lot. So then it's like, oh, okay. So I'll usually say, I'm from New York and I live, in Jersey City. So that seems to cover it. And then just continue, the conversation usually. But yeah, that's what kind of happens often is when I'm in Latin America, people will ask me if I'm from Brazil or if I'm from, Colombia. But not usually, again, if I'm in the country, they ask me if I'm from another country. So probably because and then I just say New York and that seems to work.
And Jeannette, what are the variations that you run into?
Yes. And, I get it here in the States. I get that question a lot all the time. They say, where are you from? What are you? And I used to get offended growing up because I think I just, I was like, what do you mean? What am I? You know what I mean? But then now as an adult, I recognize it's beautiful because it gives me an opportunity to share more about, my culture, my, Mexican-American roots. But now I play a guessing game. Now I turn it back on the person who's asking me, say, well, guess. And it's been really fun to see where they say, I mean, I've gotten everything from India, Greece, Italy, Brazil, Colombia, Peruvian, Indonesian, Philippines. I get everything. And I actually think it's beautiful because I also I love being ambiguous now because I just, embrace that. And so, yeah, I feel like a global citizen as well. So I think it's just beautiful. I'm like, well, okay. But I don't get offended anymore. I think it's an opportunity.
Right. And we're at a stage now where we're getting back out there, right? More and more people are traveling. And you've seen the headlines. We've heard the stories of just this madness at airports and on airplanes. And I'm wondering, are we just so boy, do we have the sense of urgency to travel that we're forgetting all of our manners? Or what is it that's causing some of this craziness on planes and at airports these days? And do you see a travel industry that's going to be markedly different in how it deals with customers pre-pandemic and then now coming out of this? Kim, let's start with you.
I do not know why we've seen an uptick in incidents on planes and in airports. I don't know what sparked that. I do know that it doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense to me to start something on an airplane. I mean, we all need to get there safely. So, I think we owe the flight attendants, the crew, respect. And if things aren't going your way, just take a deep breath and know that things will work out. And the most important thing is that we all arrive at our destination safely. So all these other things become hindrances in terms of us trying to arrive safely. And nothing is that important that you need to, hit a flight attendant loses teeth. I mean, this is incredible. And so I think that I'm not sure what this is about. But I did see that I think the federal government, Homeland Security, has stepped in and said, we're going to take this very seriously. And I think we need there need to be consequences for, people's behaviors, especially on, airplanes, so that the pilots can fly the plane and fly it in peace and know. I mean, I want the pilot to be well rested, to not have to worry about anything happening in the rest of the cabin. I think we all want that. So anything that, I can do as, a passenger, hopefully to sit and just be quiet and to make their job as easy as possible. I mean, yes, you may have a disagreement, but I just don't understand where all this is coming from. But I think if we start thinking about what is the end goal, we need to arrive at our destination, and anything else that can distract is not helpful. And so I was glad to see that Homeland Security said we are cracking down. This is unacceptable. And I hope they follow through with that. And I hope that there are some consequences so that people know that, when we're flying, we're all in it together and we all need to arrive at our destination safely. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Jeannette, I mean, have we lost sight of our manners in not being able to travel for the last 18 months? Did we forget how to? Or what is it from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I know some people may have felt, landlocked for so long, maybe going a little stir crazy in the sense where they can't wait to get out. I understand, but that doesn't excuse, behavior, disrespecting, flight crew, pilots, passengers as well. I think that now, especially for international travel, there's more layers that we have to go through. For example, COVID test. Some countries still might require quarantine. So now in the new norm where we are for travel, I think it requires more patience, more understanding that it will not go back to the way it was before. But we're all just trying to do the best we can. So the best we can do is just be patient with each other, respectful. And so, like just what Kim was saying, is just we're all in it. We're all on a plane together, right? We all want to get to our destination safely.
Yeah.
So just, if there's still that mask mandate until September 13th of what I'm aware of, we all have to do it. And it's, so it's part of the new norm. So it's just being patient with that. Things may start to slowly get better, faster. I think it's just, we're all in this together, right? We're all trying to figure it out, I think. And so just having that mindset is key.
That's great. Hey, listen, a final question for the two of you. And again, back to this serious note of the topic of our discussion being, what does representation look like in the travel industry? We've been going through in our society now over the last couple of years a reassessment, I think, of our roles as communities, our roles as storytellers. In 5 years, Jeannette, where do you expect to be? How do you expect or what do you think representation will look like 5 years from now?
Yes. Well, in 5 years, I will be 40. And so by that time, I hope to be married with kids. But on a side note, I have young nieces that are range from 4 months old to 24 years old. So I have young nieces, and I want them to grow up and in 5 years, hopefully live in a world where they don't have to, fight for, a seat at the table, whatever industry they want to work in or study in. I hope it's just the norm where they see more Latinos, Hispanics, women, everywhere. So it's not, where we're having to constantly advocate and fight for just the equal opportunity. So I hope that's my hope in the next 5 years. I feel like this movement for more diversity and inclusion is definitely going in a good direction. I think we're starting to make a lot of in travel specifically. And so like NAHJ, like Palabra, like Kim and Ricardo, you are all contributing to this great movement and being representative of it as well. I also hope to have my travel show that I've been having for 15 years. That's been the little girl dream of mine. But also one of the things that I'm inspired to do is to create a travel study abroad scholarship at my alma mater, Belmont University, to give students, to me, what's the best gift in education and travel. So I really want to find ways in 5 years to give back as much as I can.
That's so cool. I look forward to seeing that. Kim,
Yeah.
5 years from now, is the Kim Haas enterprise going to be rivaling the Rick Steves empire on public media? Where are we going to be in 5 years?
Absolutely. I mean, we're thinking big. We want, I think, to do what Rick Steves has done in Europe, in Latin America. So I see in 5 years a lot more opportunity. I think by then we will have shot in so many of these countries, and those shows will be airing on public television, on PBS. And I'm really excited about the future. I think hopefully, obviously, global health issues will not be, a concern, and that all of us will be healthy and well. I mean, that's obviously super important. But yes, I think, I love to see and do what Rick Steves has done in Europe for Latin America, and give, be part of this movement to give greater representation, in particular to Afro Latinos. I'd love to see more Afro Latinos in Spanish language television, both in the United States, but also throughout Latin America in their own individual countries. And so whatever I can do to help promote that, be a part of it, inspire it, would be absolutely fantastic. But I think, as you mentioned, I think, Rick Steves has paved the way for what you see in terms of travel in Europe. And yeah, I definitely would like to do the same. And then I want to watch Jeannette's show. So, I'll be watching her show on television, and that will be cool as well.
All right. This has been great. Hey, listen, I appreciate the time that you've taken with us today. I appreciate everybody being with us for this conversation. I just want to remind everybody to keep that passport updated and ready to crack open when you get to the immigration booth. Traveling, being out there, being part of the world, I think is a fantastic business opportunity for us, for our communities. Earlier when I mentioned the 400 billion global travel market, there is a significant subsector of that, which is educational travel.
Yes.
Is traveling with a purpose. And I think you two are at the vanguard for us in that sector, because more and more people don't just want to go visit someplace to have a nice margarita. They want to know what's going on in that country. And I think here we have a golden chance to become leaders in the sector, to set the stage for how it can be done. So I'm expecting to see great things from you guys. I appreciate the time.
Oh, can I excuse me, Ricardo, one plug, please?
Sure.
You can catch Afro Latino Travels on Create TV, PBS's lifestyle travel network, How To, on July 29th and August 5th. So we have episodes running then.
And
so thank you.
And Jeannette, where do we find you? Where do we find your work?
Yes, you can find me. My website is my central point. It's also a portfolio of all my past and current work. It's www.jetsetwithjeannette.com. Also, social media, you can find me at Jet Set with Jeannette. And it's me. I'm always happy to be a resource to help. I have mentees. Anything I can do to be of service is really what I love to do. So reach out.
That's great. Thank you. And of course, you can find me lurking about on Palabra, but also you can find me on my public editors page at pbs.org. Listen, let's keep the conversation going. Reach out to us. And so we hope to hear from our audiences. We hope to hear from everybody and continue to participate in this fantastic 2021 virtual NHJ conference. There's a great week coming up for everybody. And once again, thanks everybody for being with us. Look forward to more of this. Okay, everybody, take care. Thank you.
Adiós.
Adiós.
Gracias.